Mike, you're the president and partner of State Line Products, Pool King, and Florida Pool.
Yes. The baby boomer, they call it the silver tsunami. You've got baby boomers that are retiring right now at a crazy rate. There's opportunities all over the place. And most of these people, they don't know that they have the ability to sell their business.
So someone looking for a company is probably better off going through a broker, getting to know the owner of a company that you're buying, and developing that relationship, finding out what they want to do, whether that's stay on as an employee or a consultant or something along those lines. Mike, thank you for taking the time.
I appreciate you having me out.
You're the president and partner of State Line Products, Pool King, and Florida Pool.
Yes. 3
different companies that you've worked your way into as a partner and leading the organizations over the last, is it fair to say 4 years or so?
We bought State Line in November 2020, so we're getting close to there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have just, I think, a fascinating story. We know each other outside of this, and the more I learn about you, the more interested I am in your story, because you went from a blue-collar town in Missouri to eventually finding your way to South America, and then working a W-2 job to becoming a partner in what I think is a very fascinating business strategy, where you're buying companies, improving them, kind of like what we do in the apartment space, holding on to them, and then looking for future acquisition targets. Is that accurate to say in a nutshell?
Yeah. That wasn't, I don't think that was the original plan, but that's what it's become.
Awesome. So I mentioned you grew up in a blue-collar town. Can you give us a little bit of background just in terms of how you grew up and maybe your first taste of entrepreneurship, or what led you into an entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, I grew up in Imperial, Missouri. So my dad's a construction worker. He has been for 35, 40 years. Mom stayed at home, raised the kids. Dad always, he worked hard. The construction life, it's rough. But he always did. He had like little side hustles. He'd do side jobs, always wanting to make cash. That's, the typical construction worker. They do something on the side. And that was his way of, I guess, getting out there and doing his own, work and trying to have some kind of entrepreneurship. He had a vending machine business for a short period of time, which I think we ate all of his profits, because he would have the candy and the chips and all that stuff downstairs, and we would go downstairs and not steal his stuff, but he would just kind of left it open to us, and quickly found out that we were eating the profits that he had. So, but yeah, that was, I didn't really realize that at the time that's what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And when I look back and I start kind of look at what I've done and looking what he probably would have liked to have done, they had kids. I think my parents had me when I was, or when they were 20. So, 3 kids, it's a little hard to start your entrepreneurial journey and take that risk. But he flipped some houses. He flipped his way all the way up to the house that they currently live in. And, again, noticed that later on in life. But at the time, just kind of, he was away from the house a lot. But just kind of saw the struggle that I guess that he went through. It's a lot, and especially going through it myself, I realized the stress and the pressure and stuff that it puts on a person and a family.
That's a great story. Did you end up going to school for business after high school, or where did you go to college, and what did you major in?
Went to community college for a short period of time. I didn't know what I wanted to do. They always ask, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I did not have a clue what I wanted to do. I liked marketing. I always thought it was interesting. Didn't know you could have a career in sales. Again, my mom was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and she raised us, and she, worked as like a loan processor. That's what she currently does right now. And my father was in construction, so I really didn't have the opportunity to see what else was out there. And when you go to school, they just say, it puts you into a category, marketing, accounting. If you want to do any kind of business, that's your path. So I went to community college, and then eventually went to UMSL, got my accounting degree, ended up getting school paid for because I found out that, people, you can get scholarships, you can get other opportunities that comes up. So the dean got me enough scholarships to pay for school. And Yeah, so I graduated with a degree in accounting and business administration.
That's an interesting point you just made, the knowing people piece. And I think that possibly helped you later in life as well in entrepreneurship. And I'm sure it helps you to this day. I'm finding that more and more every year I learn it really is about who you know and nurturing those relationships and truly, I think, trying to bring value to people, and then they tend to bring, value into your life as well if you approach relationships that way. When you graduated, did you go into accounting or what was your first job out of school?
I had an internship with SanDisk,
Okay.
so they're based out of California. It was a boring job. We went to go make sure that the product was stocked and that the people that were educated. I didn't really enjoy it that much, but with accounting, because I chose my emphasis a second or third year, and I knew in school that I was not going to work in accounting. I hated it, didn't like it, but I found it interesting going through financial statements and understanding personal finance. And the one class that I had was with Michael Brown. He was the entry-level accounting teacher. And he specifically said, please, everybody show up to class. This is going to be the most important day out of this class and probably out of your entire curriculum that you're going to have. And he taught us how to, what to do with your money, how to save, how, compounding interest, that there's alternative investments, real estate, buying businesses, stuff like that. And then I started listening to podcasts and stuff, and I got really excited about real estate, but didn't really have a clue where to start. But yeah, I did not want to go into accounting. It just seemed like a very boring field, and it did not fit my personality at all.
So you went where I would call is the opposite side of the spectrum, from boring to extremely exciting.
Yeah. Stressful. I would say stressful and exciting. It's like it's a roller coaster for sure.
Can you expand on, when you decided that you didn't want to go into accounting, what you ended up doing?
I was running a few organizations. The International Business Club, I was part of it. And then ISIC, it's an international organization that helps students get internships overseas. Works really well in third world countries, second world countries, but in the United States, it's a little more difficult because you have to work with a company to get them to provide a J1 visa, and we were supposed to facilitate that process. Much easier overseas because a lot of those are like English teaching jobs, but bringing immigrants over here was a process. It was a difficult process. So I met somebody. His name was Miguel, and we became really good friends, and his visa was expiring, and he said, I appreciate your friendship. I would love to, show you my country and show you, the city that I live in. If you ever get the opportunity to come down to Colombia, please come down and consider it. And I said, I'll be down there in July. And he's like, no, and he laughed. He's like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, no, really, I'll be down there in July. And I was... I don't know. I was sitting at the house one night, and I'm like, it just sounded exciting. And I had been a part of these, international clubs in school, and I'm like, well, why not? So I booked a ticket at midnight, and it was a round trip ticket for 4 months. And my idea was that I was going to learn Spanish in 4 months. And I had no Spanish. I didn't speak, I would always say, hola, me llamo es Michael. And it's like you're saying is twice.
Okay.
So that's all I knew. And the time came up and I was panicking because, Colombia is always looked upon as just a super dangerous country because of all the things that happened with Escobar and stuff. But I did it, and I went down there, and my roommate at the time, his cousin was living in Bogota, and he had been a part of ISIC. So we connected before going down there, and he was the one that picked me up from the airport and kind of gave me a rundown of the country, or at least Bogota when I was there. But yeah, that's how the Colombian journey started. So.
That's very cool, and I know those 4 months turned into a few years. I'm sure living in another country gave you a perspective on the US and also gave you a way to view business transactions in the future from like a different perspective. I find travel helps with that. You know, you don't get locked into the same method of viewing things. A lot of times, you know, you hear of folks going and living abroad and then coming back with fresh ideas and trying different things. When you were there, you had to find a way to support yourself, correct? Yeah. What did you end up doing?
A lot of things. I think that's where the entrepreneurial journey really started. I was teaching English. I think the second day that I was down there, I met somebody that said that they had a friend that was running Bogota Business English, and I met with him like a week later. He's basically said, look, if you can graduate from university, you can teach English. He's like, here's the book, read it, and you get your first class in 2 days. So I was teaching business. It was, you know, anywhere from like entry-level business people to executives. I was teaching the president of Microsoft. Hernando was amazing. He actually, the last day of my class with him, he was crying and he gave me a really big hug because I gave him, he already spoke really good English, but I gave him the confidence to speak. So it was cool. But making pesos, it's hard. You know, you're not really making that much money. And what I thought I was going to do all this traveling and stuff turned out not to be the case. I lived in Bogota for 3 years, traveled a little bit, but you know, making pesos was different than making dollars in a country like that. So, but throughout that entire time, I had a friend that knew an AT&T refurbisher. So when you go to take your phone and go trade it in for another one, they sell it to an AT&T reseller. They refurbish the phones and then they sell them off to bigger companies. Well, since I knew this person, I'd go buy 100 phones from him and I'd bring them down in my suitcase, and then I would go to the distribution centers, and then like, you know, a lot of countries outside the United States, they have like these little bodega spots or these centers that have, I mean, you could have like in a 10 by 10 room, you could probably have 3 shops. And they're tiny, they're small, but they sell a lot of product, and they all sell the same product. And I would take, 10 phones here, 10 phones there, and just piece them out in the morning and then come pick my money up in the afternoon and catch a taxi hoping nobody was going to rob me and come back and do that. I remember riding around on a moped with a guy that I had just met because he knew somebody that wanted some phones, and scary, but yeah, I was taking some risk down there and it worked out. But did that. I was running a language exchange. We would teach gringos and we would teach the locals how to speak in slang down there. It was a lot of fun. I had a really good time with it. Made a lot of good friends out of it. And then I was dealing with Colombian emeralds. I had met a man, and it's a very long story, but I had met somebody at a party, and my biggest problem was getting money up to the United States. So he said, well, why don't you buy emeralds here, send the emeralds up to the States, and then use that money to buy the cash and phones and send the phones down here. Thought it was a great idea, but we sold some stones, but we had a website and everything ready to go, but it was just the trust in that business. Most of it is, they're all in families, they all know each other, and the fact that I was a gringo sitting in these rooms with these people that were selling millions of dollars worth of emeralds, it was, I didn't have the capital at the time, and when I would tell somebody like, hey, we're raising money to go buy some stones that we're going to go sell in the United States, it just sounded sketchy. So it worked out. It was fun. I got to hear so many crazy stories from them. I mean, I loved it. I still speak to him today. He's actually working for Muso International, it's pretty amazing. So, yeah.
That incredible story. You eventually got into sales, and I've got to ask you, when you mentioned the emeralds, I was reminded of some of the spam emails I get.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Did that sharpen your sales skills or really introduce you to how difficult sales can be?
Yeah, you got to build trust with people, and something like that, it just sounds so off the wall. Nobody in Missouri, I brought stones up here and I was taking them to jewelers around, and, you got to have them approved. You got to have a certificate from the GIA, and, all this stuff and the stones that they want here, $5,000, $10,000 stones. It's a lot of trust. I mean, they gave them to me on consignment, but they gave me lower quality stones to bring up here. So it did give me a taste of it, going into a jeweler, saying I have this product, trying to get them to buy into it. It's discouraging, especially if you don't have a trusted name in the business. It's gonna be very difficult for somebody to take you serious. So that was when I first came back to the States, and I can get into the rest of the sales career if you like.
Yeah, would love to hear it, because I think your path from, as you put it, W-2 to entrepreneurship is one that a lot of people may look to emulate or have emulated. So would love to hear that path.
Yeah, started out in insurance. My cousin worked for Colonial Life, so I started there. It's the same thing. You got some kid, I was 25, or I was 27, I think, when I came back, 26, 27. And when you're trying to sell policies for a company, you need to have somebody by your side that's a little bit older, been in the business for a while. So I was setting up meetings, and I liked it. We had it, we did some sales. It's just when you're talking about death, cancer, all that stuff, it was just a miserable sale. And then I had a friend that was telling me that he was doing not final expense, but when we were dealing with people in the next insurance, or the next sales position was with another insurance brokerage, and it was like final expense insurance. So we were covering basically insurance to bury somebody. And I did really well with it. But again, going back to talking about cancer and death every day was just miserable. I didn't like it. I was making money, and I'm like, I can't do this. I need a happy sale if I'm going to stick with this. And I was venting to a friend of mine, and her husband, or fiance at the time, he ran a brokerage with USA Mortgage. And he'd been talking me to get in. He's like, why don't you stop being a slimy insurance salesperson and come be a mortgage person? And he got me in. He trained me up, and I got into the mortgage business. And I still hold my license, do deals. I take a name and a number, and I give it to my assistant, and he runs with it. But it's a great career path. You can do really well with it. You can make a lot of money with it. I didn't see the path of getting an assistant and getting a system in place at the time, and I didn't have anybody that was kind of showing me that way. So I was taking phone calls till 10 o'clock at night. My thing was like, I'm available whenever. Well, people took that to heart, and they would call me when they're panicking about buying a house, which is a stressful experience. And I think after about 3 or 4 years, I was just getting burnt out. And an opportunity came up with a friend that worked for a roofing manufacturer. And I got into that. And because I'd always wondered what, working for a corporate company would look like. USA was, but it was more, you're kind of an independent contractor in a sense. But this was, the corporate path. I mean, you literally start out as a salesperson, you can work your way up to manager, district manager, regional. So I said, yeah, let's try it out. Let's do it. It was great. It kind of gave me what a corporate sales process looks like, what they expect using CRMs. It wasn't like, hey, you should use this. Like, no, you have to use this. This is what you have to do. And I was doing B2B. And so dealing with distribution, dealing with contractors. And since I came kind of from a blue collar family, I was able to relate to them a little bit better and still put on a nice shirt and some nice shoes. And, you're coming from corporate. They all know that you're coming from a corporate office, but it was easier to relate with those people.
That's a great point, and I'm sure a skill that helps you to this day when you're taking over a new company. A lot of times you'll see folks that, let's say, are fresh out of graduate school with an MBA looking to buy an HVAC company or a plumbing company or something along those lines. And my initial thought, I've never been through that, so I don't know, but my initial thought is always, how are the existing team members going to react to you stepping in? And you mentioning that you have a blue-collar background that you kind of mesh with your more professional white-collar side. And I don't even know if that's the right phrase or if I just accidentally said something that's offensive to anyone.
No, it's true, though. They size you up. I mean, we've done it 3 times. and I'm the face of it. So I have partners with each one of the businesses, and that first day is very intimidating because you're walking into a company that the employees have no clue what's happening. And they do that for a reason, because the owner will run the risk of losing those people, and that's going to devalue the company if they sell it with their key person leaving or start looking for another job. So you don't want to bring that panic before the sale. And unfortunately, you want to do it the day of the sale, and you want to do it as soon as possible. But those initial meetings everybody's worried. Everybody's concerned. They don't know who you are. They don't know your background. So you really have to get some confidence in those people in that first meeting, and then in those initial days following. I mean, it's very important to kind of win them over.
Let's get into that a little more. So after that last sales job, you found your partners and bought State Line, correct? Can we talk about that and then those initial days?
Yeah, so State Line was a company that had been ran for 15 years by a gentleman from Jefferson County. He had built the company. He was working for somebody else, and then he went off and did his own thing. He ran it as a mom and pop. I mean, he had his crew, but it was just, he did all the bidding. He was working on the jobs himself. He was managing the crews, his wife was doing the books. And, whenever we had our initial meetings with him, he was, we knew how much he was making and knew that, we're going to have to take our salaries out of that profit. Really didn't, we went through the financial statements and stuff. But, I didn't come from a PE background or anything like that. So really doing the due diligence and analyzing the business, we missed a lot of things. So the first day getting in there, I'll back up a little bit. Whenever the opportunity came up, I was working with a brokerage, Premier Business Brokers. They found the opportunity, presented it to me. I had a conversation with a friend of mine from high school that had been working with a competitor for 3 years, basically running the business. He ran all the operations, did the bidding estimates, all that stuff. And he told me, Mike, I'm fed up. They're not paying me what I should be making. I'm seeing guys making 6 figures, and I'm just not getting that opportunity. They're taking advantage of me. I want something that I could bring, I can better my life and better my family with. I need to make more money with this. I was looking at sales jobs, giving them, opportunities through that. But then, the broker called me and he's like, hey, I've got this garage door company that's for sale, do commercial work. They don't do any residential. I said, I don't know if the stars are aligning right now or not, but I literally just had a conversation with somebody yesterday that is basically running a competitor's business, and he's looking to make a switch. So we had that conversation. COVID happened. We were in the middle of COVID. It's November 2020 when we closed, but we were looking at this opportunity at the beginning of 2020. And the previous owner told us, he's like, look, this isn't stopping. We're essential workers. There is more business than I can even handle. He's like, literally, if you want to grow this thing, all you have to do is start accepting these bids. And it was very true. So we told him, I said, while we were going through this, I said, start accepting as much as you possibly can. We didn't know what that meant. And the idea was, it was me and 2 other partners, and then the guy that was running it, he was going to get a percentage, but since he wasn't putting any money into the deal, the 3 partners put the money up to buy the business through an SBA loan. And the idea is that we'd provide the working capital, keep the business afloat. The owner told us it would only be $30,000 of working capital, which would pay salaries, which we found out we needed a lot more than that later on. But yeah, our operating partner, managing partner, whatever you want to call him, he came in and he was working with the previous owner every day, learning, because he knew about garage doors, so it only made sense for him to be in that position. And then I was working on the back end, dealing with the books, the general contractors, getting lien waivers, dealing with all the paperwork side of it. And that was interesting itself. The first day with her, I said, why don't you send me those lien waivers over? Just email it over to me. Here's my email address. And she said, no, I'll just mail it to you. I said, why would you mail it? What are you talking about? And she's like, well, I've never sent an email before. And panic set in, and they had dial-up internet. it was just, because it was going to require me to go to her house every single day, or every day that we needed to get work done and go to her house. I was working a 9 to 5. I was still working for the roofing manufacturer. So, but during COVID, we had a little more flexibility, and I didn't have to, we weren't supposed to be visiting contractors. We were supposed to be doing it all over the phone and through a computer. So I'd knock out that work in the morning, go there in the afternoon, and do whatever we needed to do to get the business organized. And it was pretty chaotic.
I think you just showed a lot of grit with your story there, having your full-time job and then helping to run this company after hours. A lot of times you hear about, especially I think folks our age, you hear about side hustles. This is beyond a side hustle to maintain with a full-time job. So you talk about, for example, the one team member that was mailing instead of emailing. I would love to hear about some of the operational improvements that you implemented at State Line. Because for us, for example, if we're acquiring an apartment community, operational improvements are the number one thing we're looking to do. And that can be, one example is rental applications. Instead of paper, we want it all online. We want it through our system where we can detect fraud and look at, credit score, all those types of things. What are some of the operational improvements that you implemented with State Line?
Well, we started using email right off the bat.
That's a big one.
That was great. I had never done anything like this before. I was from blue collar, but I've never dealt with GCs. I mean, we're talking Arco, Brinkman, Clayco, big names in the St. Louis community, and then other GCs from outside of St. Louis. We just really hired team members that knew what they were supposed to do. I mean, I remember distinctly sitting at 360 with my wife and a friend of ours, and I was venting about all the problems that I was having, just telling her just how slow the process was and some of the issues that were going on. And she said, well, did you look at this? Have you looked into that? And I said, no, but why do you know all this? She's like, I've told you that I used to run my father's GC, my general contracting company, for 15 years. I ran the company. I said, why did we not have this conversation sooner? And she's like, I don't know, but here we are. And I said, okay, well, how would this work? I need some help. She's like, well, I've been wanting to get in as a consultant with a company. And if you want, I can act as your consultant. I can tell you where your holes are in your system and help put a system together for you. So I would love to tell you that I put the system together, but her and I worked together to do this. And so she got us organized. We brought on a full-time bookkeeper / she's got her CPA, but she was familiar. She actually worked for the competitor. So she was unhappy at that place. And she actually worked with Jesse, my managing partner that handles the operations. Those two worked together. They had a good relationship. And he said, hey, we really need somebody and you can work remote and you don't have to put in 40 hours a week. We only need 20. So she came on board, which was huge. And she started dealing with the lien waivers and dealing with the GCs, and then started managing our credit card costs because the employees in the field, I mean, we drop ship and then we mobilize. So we're all over the United States. They were running rampant, using the credit card for whatever they wanted, and we didn't have a system to check them on what they were spending money on. So we got that organized and had some checks and balance with that, and just held them accountable for the money that they were spending. We set up a per diem. We started using Airbnbs versus hotels, which saved us a ton of money. I mean, you got 8 guys staying in hotels. I mean, we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on hotels a year. So bookkeepers in place. Fallon, my consultant at the time, she has 2 young kids, and she was looking for something remote, and it was already going well. And she said, what's your plan after this? I said, well, what's your plan after this? Because we could still use some help because I'm still doing a lot of it. And she's like, well, I've been interested in something full time. And we paid her a salary that she was really happy with and allowed her to work remote. And the whole idea was, look, you don't have to be on the clock 40 hours a week. I don't care when you work, as long as the work's getting done. Pick your own hours. We just need to make sure this is getting done in a timely manner so that we're not getting held up because you have to bill at the end of the month. And if we miss that, then we don't have another opportunity to bill to the next month. So we brought her on, and then she kind of took it from there. We ended up hiring, her and I worked together for about a year, and we ended up bringing on an assistant for her. And so our back end office, we've got, Jesse that handles the operations in the field. He's got somebody underneath him. Paula's our bookkeeper. She handles everything, and she does more because she's dealing with the GCs and lien waivers. Fallon is basically making sure that we're staying on track. She provides reports on we have a Monday call, which was huge because we weren't doing that. The communication, everybody was doing things twice because they were having conversations with each other, but they weren't having a collective conversation. So I said, we have to have these Monday meetings because everybody's all over the place. Everybody's doing the same thing. So the Monday meetings were huge. We would all get on, talk about the week. What do we need to finish up? What do we need to get done? And that really helped us get organized. And and then just training, the guys in the field, anybody with a pulse that wanted to work, we were bringing them on, but the garage doors are super technical. So they just started getting better. We started actually training them. We had time. My operations guy, we took off a lot of pressure from him because we built the back end office, and he wasn't having to deal with the vendors and the general contractors all the time. So he had more availability to help train these people, and really built a team. We run with 3 crews at the moment, sometimes 4. And I mean, we went from 2.5 in revenue to close to 10 this year. So in 3 years, I mean, we've had a lot of growth.
Yeah, that's incredible growth. So you're installing garage doors in industrial facilities or warehouses across the country. You're doing that with that back office that you mentioned, and then 3 or 4 crews. Those 3 or 4 crews, are they all full-time employees of the company, or are they contractors at sometimes? And then also, how are you handling the logistics? Because that's the piece that I just can't wrap my head around. It seems so complicated.
The crews are full-time. There's some that, are part-time.
Sure.
We give them as many hours as we can. We have to keep them busy, otherwise they're going to find something else. And that's the challenge, is you've got to fill the gaps, because you've got, we'll do a $2 million job that takes, months, but if another trade hasn't finished what they've done, it pushes that job back. So we're constantly moving people around. Like if we've got time, we're like, all right, we need to wait a week. We need to figure out what to do with these guys. We'll move them over to another job. So the travel costs are hefty. It is a challenge. So I think what I mentioned before was the way that our operations work is we get the job, get the start date, we order the material drops usually a week or 2 before, we mobilize the team, and then the back end office is helping get those guys organized, whereas our operator was having to do that before. So they book the Airbnb and get the guys out there, drop ship the material, and they get to work and just move on to the next job. So it's great for us because we don't carry any inventory, so overhead is minimal. Challenge with all that is that when the material drops, the clock starts ticking. So we're on a net 30 with some vendors, and then we're on a net 60 with others. But the problem is, if it drops on the 1st and we can't build to the 25th, the GC typically takes anywhere from 30 to 45 days to pay us. So we have to carry that. And if you've got a $2 million job and probably 80% of that is material, that's a lot of money. So that's where we ran into issues in the beginning, because the previous owner told us, hey, like, you need 30 grand to run this company. Well, we didn't think about the material that needed to be paid for. So I remember sitting in New York with my wife. We got away for a couple of days to go see her brother, and get a phone call from the previous owner, because he's still working with us. And he said, these vendors are calling and yelling at me saying that you owe $500,000 next week or they're going to cut you off. I said, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, the material needs to be paid for. I said, well, we just can't pay whenever we get paid from the GC. He's like, yeah, you can, but you're on a net 30 or a net 60, and you're at 70 days. So we ended up having to chip in. We had to borrow money, and then eventually get a line, because a line of credit with the bank, they gave us 50 grand in the beginning and we needed like $1 million. So I ended up getting that set up. I mean, again, a lot of stupid mistakes, things that could have been prevented if we actually knew what we were doing, but, figured it out along the way. A lot of, sleepless nights but, again, I mean, we figured it out and we just got through it. There was a lot of challenges with that company.
Sometimes learning the hard way is the best way because you learn lessons that you will never forget and you'll never repeat those same mistakes. In terms of you mentioned the payment terms with the vendors. As you've grown, are you able to renegotiate those at all, or is that pretty standard?
It's just, State Line was a small company. They knew the owner, they knew him well. He kind of makes a name for himself in the industry. He's very knowledgeable. He's just a little bit grumpy sometimes. So they all were very familiar with him. And with the payment terms, it's negotiable to a sense, but getting better terms, the terms are the terms. They're not going to change those. But if we communicate with them in the beginning and tell them, look, we've got $1 million order with you. We got a big project. Material, we need the material to drop on the 15th or whatever. We're not going to be able to build till the 25th. We know that we're going to get this money in 30 to 45 days. Can you please work with us and give us, just give us an extension? It's not like a formal written extension or anything like that, but they know that they can tell their boss that this material is going to be paid for. It's, we're going to go ahead and drop it. We're okay with this. And that we know that we're going to get our money in X amount of time. So they don't give us an extension on the terms, but as long as the communication is there, then they're more than willing to work with us. And it's taken a while to get that relationship built up, especially after taking on these $2-3 million jobs. They want to grow as much as we do, but they're hesitant because, we're still a small business, and they know that, we have capital built up now, but it's a risk for them. So it's just communication at the end of the day, and relationships go a long way.
Right. That makes sense. And appreciate you sharing. So you mentioned the previous owner or the seller still being on board. How important is it for you to keep the seller on board when you buy a new business? And then also, as you continue to grow, if you were to acquire another company that's similar to State Line or Pool King, do you think you'd need to or even want to keep the sellers on board since you've developed your own processes?
It's important, for sure. With this particular company, actually, the owner is still working for us. So I see he found out what retirement really looks like, and he did not like it. You can only play golf so many days a week, and I think he's probably mid-70s right now. He loves what he does. He's knowledgeable. He takes pride in what his knowledge. I mean, it's something that he's done his entire life, and just not doing that anymore. It's difficult. I don't think that I would ever want to retire, and if I did, I'd still want to feel important. So he still works with us. He's doing a lot of estimating and bidding, but it was very challenging because he ran his business his way, and whenever we started coming in and putting systems in place, it was tough. And we actually got to a point where his wife was still the bookkeeper, and we needed to get somebody else that knew how to use QuickBooks Online, that could send emails, that was just faster. And she didn't want him working in the business if she wasn't working in the business. So we kind of held hostage for a little bit, and it was a challenge, and it was a delicate situation because at the time we still wanted him to be on there. But no, it's difficult. I mean, and now he's not he doesn't make decisions. He's just doing the work, and he's completely fine with that. But it was difficult for him to let go because he was consistently criticizing us for the things that we were doing, even if they were right, even if they were better. And him getting frustrated, yelling at people, yelling at, my employees, I'd have to talk him off a ledge and calm him down and let him know where his place was in the company. And so it was difficult. But again, back then we needed him, it was technical. And some of these big jobs that we take on, somebody with that experience it's invaluable. So it's difficult. With Florida Pool and Pool King, the agreement with, normally whenever you sign an agreement, they'll do, the standard, I guess, is about 30 to 60 days. So, if you're walking into a business that is a little bit easier to understand, pools aren't super technical. If you have a key person in place, that key person can usually run it. If you don't have that key person in place, you're that key person now, and you should have that experience, and you're going to have to learn on the fly. So if you're buying a business and you have zero clue about pools, about garage doors, you better make sure that those key employees are going to be there, or at least you have somebody to lean on that's going to be able to educate you in the process.
How are you ensuring they stay in place, or can you even ensure they stay in place?
You can't. So you talk to the owner, and they can tell you whatever they want, and you just trust them, and you build that trust through due diligence and having conversations. We had a good feeling with Pool King. They've been around for 40 years. It's his baby. He spent a lot of really hardworking years in that, and he did not want to see somebody take this thing over and run it into the ground. So there was, in the agreement, I think it said 60 days that he would stick around. But, he told me in the beginning, him and his wife said, we'll stick around as long as it's necessary. And honestly, he's like, you might get an employee out of it because I don't know what I'm going to do in retirement. And we're still trying to figure that out right now. We took over in May of 23. And him and I still have conversations. He was actually in yesterday, and I give him an update, just kind of make him feel good, let him know what's happening, improvements that we're making, decisions that I made, struggles I'm going through. But it's hard for him. He really he's having a difficult time dealing with this because you work your entire life and you put your heart and soul into something. You, as business owners, you live and breathe this stuff, and sometimes you kind of forget about yourself. You don't have hobbies, and he's kind of going through that right now. And with Florida Pool, he was done. It was like 30 days came up. He said, hey, I'm done tomorrow. And we ended up having we had a dinner, and I asked him, I said, you got anything to say, to the crew before you get out? He said, goodbye, I'm out of here. So enjoy it. I'm going to Florida. So, he was ready to go, but he was a little bit younger, and he had hobbies, he had things that he really enjoyed. So I think his work-life balance was a little bit better than the other owner. But yeah, it's important to go back. Sorry, I go off on tangents sometimes, but it's really important to have these people on. Just be aware that they might be toxic to the business, or they might be micromanagers that are going to be questioning you on everything that you're doing. And at some point, you're going to have to break that tie. And, Florida Pool, we didn't have a decision. He was done, and we figured it out. With Pool King, there's a lot more involved. There's a buying group. There's a lot of vendors that we deal with. But the company it could run itself, but they've always been used to somebody micromanaging the business. So, and then you do need a decision maker to kind of have that final say. So, but yeah, he's sticking around. We're going to use him when we have questions and stuff like that. But I think just getting a relationship with the owner and just making it known, look, I might run into some problems. If you wouldn't mind me reaching out, most of them are more than happy to do that. And then if they are pushed back a little bit, you could say, look, I'll pay you for your time. You could be a consultant, agree on a hourly rate. And for them to be able to pick up the phone or jump on a computer anywhere that they're at, if they're going to make some good money from it, then they're usually pretty receptive to that.
That's a great point and a great tip. I would love to know how you got into swimming pools from garage doors. And then also if you can kind of expand on the difference between the two swimming pool companies as well.
Yeah. Same company that brought the opportunity, Premier Business Brokers. They've been around for about 10 years, and I've got a good relationship with one of the brokers there. And I was ready for the next step because with State Line, it's more about networking and relationships, and we kind of tee that up for the team and then connect them with our project manager / operator, and he's got the knowledge so he can speak to them. But I quickly found out that I'm not needed. I'm needed in big decision making things and dealing with the banks and make sure we have enough money for cash flow and all that. But I quickly saw that we could hire somebody much better and that has the skill set to come in that already knows it. So that's what we did with State Line. And right now, that's kind of my role is I just make sure that, the train's staying on the tracks and we provide opportunities through networking and stuff like that and get them in front of the right people to grow the business and looking for other opportunities. The swimming pool companies, I was more open to, we were looking for another garage door company, more for service because we do new construction right now. So we were looking for that, but this opportunity came up. The numbers made a lot of sense. The SDE, the seller discretionary earnings, were really high. They had a good team in place. They had some key people that had been there for 30-something years. It just sounded like a great business. And I kept looking at this thing, and it was under contract at the moment, but it had been under contract for over a year. And I said, what's going on with this? You got two swimming pool companies. One is retail. So they do above ground pools, semi-in-ground pools, hot tubs, swim spas, all that. But they don't do any of the install. They use a third party for the install. One thing that they didn't have was a service arm. So they didn't do pool cleanings. They wouldn't be able to replace your heater, your pump, anything like that. And the other company was strictly service. So they do hot tub cleanings, swimming pool cleanings. They do, they'll replace your heaters, your pumps, deal with automation, that kind of stuff for mostly in-ground pools and spas. But the synergy seemed perfect. I mean, it seemed like it would be a great buy to take both of them down at the same time. But it came up, I had been looking at it, and then I found out that the person that had the business under contract, he wasn't able to execute because he had some family things going on, and he wasn't willing to come down to St. Louis. And so the opportunity came up. I met with the money guy, the investor, sat there and had a conversation. I said, look, I want to take this thing down. I think I can handle it. And it's funny, I got a personal relationship with him. I had spoken with him a month before that and just told him what I was wanting to do. I said, look, I think, I've kind of worked myself out of the position over at State Line, and, we're looking for growth, but, we're still, just still building organically. But I'm ready. I think I'm ready for something else. And I was just kind of curious, what do you think my next step should be? I've got an idea, but, I need somebody to kind of pull me back and tell me, what's too much. And, he kind of gave me some advice and said, look, something around 5 million, sales price, million in SDE would be probably a good fit, something between 30 and 50 employees. That's probably something that would be the next step from here. And a month later, I found out that the contract was falling apart and that they were open to new buyers. We jumped on it, and the rest is kind of history. But it wasn't like I was looking for something specific. I just wanted something local because I was more comfortable. I wasn't ready to move. And something that I could really build, my financial stability out of. State Line, we take distributions, but I wanted to take a salary. I was still working my 9 to 5 up until March of last year. And I wanted to be able to take, I wanted to have almost like a lateral, just make a lateral move, take the same salary that I was making, and then be able to pay off the business and eventually take distributions and, build that financial freedom that I'd always been wanting to have. And it seemed like these two were going to be able to do that.
Got it. You mentioned with the pool companies, you weren't necessarily looking for a pool company, but I know now you're a little more narrow in your search for additional businesses. So you're looking for companies within a 300-mile radius that have at least 700,000 in seller discretionary earnings, and also ones that are either pool or garage door service companies, or that can be potential add-ons. So can you expand on why you have that criteria now? The radius makes sense to me. It's easier for operations. But in terms of the SDE or the add-on piece of that, can you expand on why?
With the net income or the SDE, I think from what we've experienced with the garage door company, it was lower than that. And, it was making, and I don't mind sharing this, it was making $250 net income. And, the owner he wasn't taking a big salary. That was mostly his income. But you can't really build a team, and there's not really much room for failure. You're going to make mistakes. Every decision you make is not always going to be the right one. So when we made mistakes, it really hurt. And we put ourselves in some situations that were really tight, that we ended up having to contribute money into the company. Now that it's grown, we have wiggle room on that, and it's a little, we can breathe a little bit and invest into the company. And that 700 mark, from what, I listen to Acquiring Minds a lot and a lot of podcasts, and that's kind of the number that they say. And I don't think it has to be specifically that, but it seems like whenever the company's making that amount of money, you have the ability to invest back into the company. You can actually, you're going to have a note, so you're going to have to be able to pay that note off. And if you're going conventional, they spread that out over 7 years. That's a lot. That's a very aggressive payment. The nice thing with SBA is they'll stretch it out over 25 years. So depending on how you finance that, can maybe determine the size of the business you're going to go to take down. But I think with that number, it allows you to go ahead and pay your bills, pay yourself, invest into the company, and leave a little bit of room for any hiccups that come along the way.
Got it. That makes sense there. And then in terms of the add-on piece, so if we're talking a pool service or garage door service company, that's relatively obvious. You'd be able to kind of plug and play. But what else do you mean by add-ons?
Add-ons is, I guess like you said, we could buy another pool company or distribution company or whatever it's going to be. But, since we're in front of customers on a regular basis, we could possibly do hardscapes, kind of landscaping. We could get into siding, cleaning siding, stuff like that. Just really anything that has to deal with a home. We've got a customer base now. We got a database. We can use that database to market to new customers or existing customers. Especially we've already built a name for ourselves. They already trust us. They know that we do a good job, so they would trust us if we brought in another company to handle some other services from them. And I think that's what a lot of companies end up doing more, I guess, in the private equity space, is they usually try to buy companies that do other, similar services, or, if they got that customer database and they can offer them a different service, then it makes sense. So we're still kind of exploring to see what that looks like. But, if something comes along and it's making great money, and if you can find an operator, you don't have to know the business. It helps. But I think for myself, it's better that I don't know anything about the business, because then I'm not coming into it thinking that I'm going to be cleaning pools. I'm going to be on the sales floor trying to sell pools. My team, whenever I met with them, I made it known that, look, I am more than willing to get my hands dirty, but do you want me to go out and try to install a heater? Do you want me to be on the sales floor trying to sell pools? Or do you want me to focus on the growth and making sure that you have more opportunities to grow and to really take this company to another level? And they've all embraced it. And, if something comes up, it's pretty amazing, because again, from all the micromanaging that they were used to, now they get to figure things out for themselves. And I'm there to guide, and I'm there to coach and teach them, things that maybe not how to install this, but if they run into a problem, I can make that decision for them, because sometimes people, they get into a situation and they can only think about what's in front of them. They can't think about the bigger picture. So I'm able to come in and really help navigate those issues. Yeah. So to go back to your original question, I don't think you really have to know about what you're getting into. It helps for sure. Probably be a little more confident walking into something that you already know, but I don't think it's necessary.
Thanks for sharing. There's some really important things you mentioned that I want to reiterate. So One, I would say you mentioned the premier business brokers a few times. So someone looking for a company is probably better off going through a broker relationships. Two, getting to know the owner of a company that you're buying and developing that relationship, finding out what they want to do, whether that's stay on as an employee or a consultant or something along those lines. And then three, you mentioned the team members, empowering them, getting the right people in the right seats, and also not micromanaging so that you can focus on improving the company or future acquisitions and things along those lines. So you've shared some great information. We do end each show with what we call a hole-in-one. So that would be your greatest piece of advice that someone can implement in their life or business today. You've given us a lot. Do you have anything else left in the tank?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody, whether it's real estate or getting into business, is just do it. Take the first step. First step would, get your finances in order. Start looking. Get a relationship with brokers if that's what you're wanting to do. You don't have to go that route, but there's always talk to people. Business owners that are around you, the baby boomer. They call it the silver tsunami. You've got baby boomers that are retiring right now at a crazy rate, and there's opportunities all over the place. And most of these people, they don't know that they have the ability to sell their business. So, and they're not thinking that their number two guy has the financial capability to take it down or go get a loan from the SBA. So, go talk to, you could go to a bank. Any St. Louis Business Bank is somebody that we work with. We work with Bank of Washington. Just go talk with one of the loan officers up there and see what you would need to have in place. Talk to people about what you want to do. And, talk to business owners, get to know them, see what they're, how they got their start. You don't want to go in there and just say, hey, I want to buy your business. Like, hey, I'd like to get to know your business. And what do you do? How did you get started? They might be open to selling your business or partnering up with you and letting you run things and eventually take over. I don't think there's one particular path to it. Podcasts are always great, but I think, you can educate yourself only to a certain point, and you got to be able to be ready to pull that trigger at some point. And like I mentioned, I wrote down a few things, but the Acquiring Minds is a fantastic podcast. They have another thing. It's called Acquisition Lab. It's not something that I've been a part of, but they have. It's kind of like it's like a hub that has a lot of resources that kind of help walk you through it. I really got into this from my business partner because I asked him, "Look, I'm in real estate, and you don't own any real estate. Why is that?" He owns the real estate from the businesses, but it's not something he chases. And he said, why would I go buy real estate? And it's going to be against you, so no worries. But why would I go buy real estate whenever it's going to take me 30 years to pay off? And I can go buy a business and it can pay itself off in 3 to 5 years. And if you fail, you file bankruptcy, and 2 years later, you go start again. It kind of blew my mind whenever he said that. But, seeing his profile and what he's done in his career, it's just amazing. And real estate's a great way to make money. And, I know that that's what you're into, and multifamily is something that I'm still interested in doing, and with value add and all that. But there's alternative investments that you can get into, and buying businesses is something that I think is a unique opportunity because there are so many boomers at this point in time that are retiring, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. But some other things, when you get into it, you get into the business, EO is a fantastic company. If you do buy a business, I would highly recommend getting into an organization like that because you get to network with people that are doing the same thing, and it's not just learning about business, it's learning all the struggles that come with it. Your problems don't stop when you leave the office. They continue, and sometimes you need to have people there to be able to talk about those things. And like I said, connect with a broker. They're going to take you serious if you got your finances in order and you know what you want. Because there's a lot of tire kickers out there that just think that they are able to do it, and they'll go meet with a seller and just waste people's time. But it's, just like buying a house. Get your finances in order, start talking to investors where you can find the money, and go talk with a broker and just get educated.
That's great information there. Thanks for sharing. I would agree and disagree with your friend on the real estate piece.
Right, but you would.
So I agree with him if it's somebody looking to buy real estate from, let's say, a passive perspective, and disagree if we're talking about hyper-focused in one individual niche with a proven value-add strategy, whether it's physical, operational improvement, something along those lines. Because then it's similar to what you're doing in terms of, going in and you're not paying for necessarily just what exists, but what you can do with it. So thanks again for sharing. If anyone is looking to sell a business that may interest you or wants to get in touch for any other reason, is LinkedIn the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, right now, that's probably the best way to reach out.
Sounds good. We'll put it in the description and appreciate your time.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.